Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description.
In today's podcast, we're going to be discussing some more controversy regarding Deloitte's unemployment work. We discussed in previous podcasts about Deloitte's failings with regards to unemployment work in Florida and a couple of other states. Well, now they're facing even more scrutiny in California. And the reason Deloitte is facing so much scrutiny regarding all this stuff is because unemployment work is becoming very important during COVID-19 and the pandemic, as all these lockdowns put more people out of work. And we're speaking about the United States here, and the latest controversy is in California. And in California, a state senator named Melissa Melendez is sending a letter to Sharon Hillard in the Employment Development Department of California. And she wants answers because Deloitte was recently awarded work of $5 million, and it was a no-bid contract. And Deloitte has a bunch of failings with regards to that work. And most recently, in unemployment claim letters that were sent out to people, their Social Security was included on the letter. And this leaves people subject to identity theft, and they did not sign up to have their Social Security number disclosed on these letters. And previously, Deloitte has gone over budget in California. In her letter to Sharon Hillard, Melissa says that a project that Deloitte won in 2010 ended up costing taxpayers $110 million. And in another contract that was supposed to be $35 million, and Deloitte was supposed to help fix the Employee Development Department's disability insurance claims process, that eventually came in $125 million over budget. And so Melissa Melendez says that Deloitte has a blemished track record in the past, so why are they awarded a no-bid contract? And she has some questions for Deloitte. She has some questions for Sharon. But before we get to that, there's even more controversy now, because apparently some of these unemployment checks in California were going to prisoners and people on death row. Of course, people in prison are unemployed, but that does not mean that they are entitled to unemployment benefits. So this whole project with Deloitte seems to be a complete disaster. And like we said before, she wants some answers to questions that she has. And a few of her questions are, what specific improvements did Deloitte make to the unemployment systems to improve the system itself? She wants to understand why Deloitte was engaged and whether they're going to assess the success or inadequacies of their work improving the system. And she wants any progress reports issued from Deloitte indicating their success in improving the system. She wants to know whether the recent no-bid contract can provide a status report on the project's progress, when Californians can expect to see a finished project. So she wants to understand when it will be finished, because she's worried about it going over budget. She also wants to know whether Sharon had considered any other contractors that would have been better suited to assist with the unemployment system. And she also wants to know why Deloitte was chosen, because they have a not so good track record, as she says. So why did Sharon choose them again? And she also wants to know if there's any other projects being undertaken by Deloitte that have not been already disclosed. Now, this is a pretty big controversy because Deloitte has faced this many times around the nation recently with regards to this governmental work. And it not only has implications for Deloitte, but it has implications for CPAs, accountants, and the other big four accounting firms. Because Deloitte is going to face increased scrutiny from regulators across this nation, and they might be barred from winning state work for a while in California and Florida. And I'm not guaranteeing that's going to happen, but they are increasing the likelihood of that happening the more they fail in these systems. And we know the reasons why this happens. The big four accounting firms push for constant sales and more revenue. And the partners are out there trying to get this revenue, and they're not watching their engagements. And you have young people on these engagements that might not be familiar with the HIPAA laws. And when you work for the big four accounting firms, they put the HIPAA regulations in front of you all the time. But that doesn't mean people pay attention to it. And that doesn't mean they safeguard their engagements. And that leads me to believe the partners aren't doing their job in watching their engagements, because if they were, this would not happen. When they're reviewing their deliverables, they would see that this information was coming out. But the big four accounting firms aren't afraid of these lawsuits that might come out of this, which might be fine because Deloitte almost makes $50 billion in revenue. But what they don't see coming is the increased regulation and crackdown on their ability to win further government work. And it might also be increased crackdown on CPAs in general. If you're a CPA or accountant, you probably have to take tons of ethics courses. We all do to keep our license. And the reason we do is because of accountants like this, or accounting firms that have huge failings. These senators and state senators get upset and they say we need more regulation. So to be a CPA, you have to do more and more and take more continuing education because of these partners that don't pay attention on their engagements. And in this case, it seems very egregious, but in other cases around the country, it's the same thing. So this leads me to believe that Deloitte is winning this work across the country, and they're not sharing knowledge across engagement teams, which would make sense because that's what happens in the Big Four a lot of times. They don't share knowledge between groups. It's partners winning these engagements and just getting their people up and spinning without checking with other partners across the firm to say, hey, have you done this work before? And what failings and what successes did you have? And what are some best practices? These partners have standard engagement letters. They win the work and then they just disappear trying to pitch the next engagement. And I'm not saying that's guaranteed the case, but based on my knowledge of the accounting firms, that's likely what's happening here, because some of these failings in these systems are pretty bad. And if the big four accounting firms are going to win hundreds of millions of dollars in engagement work, then they need to make sure that they do a great job, or they better make sure that their engagement letters are ironclad, because these states are going to be coming after them. So that's the update for today. To get future updates, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. And if you can, support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes to this podcast. And if you can't, just head over to our YouTube channel, Big Four Accounting Firms, subscribe to our YouTube, and like this video on our YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.